welcome to another edition of MASL Insider, telling you stories and introducing you to the players and now personnel that make up our beautiful sport of indoor soccer. My name is Christian Filliman, aka Philly. On today's episode, we have a player that has been immensely successful at every level of soccer that he has participated in. In high school, as a four-year starter, he set school records in points, goals, and assists. His team in high school even managed to have a season where they went 20-0 en route to winning a state title. He then takes his talents to Williamsburg, Virginia, where on the campus of William and Mary, four-year starter, played in every single game and was all Colonial Athletic Association, three-time all-conference. Tying it into indoor. He then lands on the Harrisburg Heat for 2 seasons before playing for the St. Louis Ambush the last 3. Now in his 5th season, he's set career highs in multiple statistical categories while leading his team in points, goals, and assists. He's also represented the Stars and Stripes of the U.S. men's national team on the futsal side. He's also got a very, very strong hair game. I am, of course, talking about William Eskay. William, welcome to MASL Insider.
Hey, how you doing? I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. As I mentioned to you earlier on, you're the first player I've really gotten a conversation with on the St. Louis Ambush. So, I'm really happy to be sitting here with you this morning. And I also wanted to say congrats on a heck of a weekend. You guys closed out your homestand this season with a couple of wins, and you obviously had a lot to do with that. 3 goals and an assist in 2 games. Way to go, man.
Yeah, thanks. That was a super important weekend for us, obviously, and kind of where we are in the standings. It's sort of do or die and try to keep our playoff hopes alive, and we did sort of just enough to stay in that spot this weekend. So the team's pretty stoked about that.
Still in the conversation, still plenty of time to get into that next season, and once you're in, it's anybody's game. Now, not sure if you caught any of these episodes, but I always like to get off to the start of getting to know you first, knowing how you grew up. You're originally from Maryland. You played your high school soccer there. Talk to us about life growing up in the Old Line State, which is Maryland for those folks who didn't know, and it's okay if you didn't, because I myself just learned that yesterday.
Yeah, so I actually was born in Arizona, and so I got to Maryland when I was like 5. And that's where my dad's side of the family is from. And I grew up there, and then I'm one of 5 kids, and so there was a lot going on there, and we were in a pretty small house until I was about 7th grade, and then we moved to what we call Querencia, which is a farm, and then from 7th grade on, I grew up on a farm, and it was super enjoyable. But Maryland, there's a ton of good soccer out in that area, Maryland, D.C., Virginia, really, really high-level soccer. And all 5 of the siblings were all college soccer players, and so we're growing up just in a house where basically that's what life is revolving around, kind of whether you like it or not. Fortunately, we all liked it, but we're just playing all the time, and I think that's, part of what ends up helping me in just becoming a good player is when you have 2 brothers and older sister that playing all the time. I mean, it's hard not to be around them all. And so I was fortunate in that regard to just naturally be able to be all trained or whatever is kind of playing and growing the game that way.
I mean, it's obviously genetics too. I mean, your grandfather played hoops, your mom ran track, your dad played soccer, obviously your siblings as well. With athletics running deep in the family, like how much of that played a part in your interest, development, and your ability to play at a high level?
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. So yeah, the athleticism, and there's a big argument between my dad and my mom about which side it comes from. We're not sure. I look more like my mom's side, so I think I'm gonna give the speed to her. But yeah, I mean, it plays a huge part. So when I was growing up, and actually, to correct one of the stats a little, so in high school I was a 4-year starter, but my freshman year I was on JV.
Okay.
So I only played varsity for 3 years, which in some sense makes like sort of the goal scoring stats actually a little more impressive because I did it in 3. But talking about the athleticism, around my 8th, 9th grade year into my sophomore year, it was when I hadn't really grown yet. So I for sure was losing interest and visibility in terms of like playing ODP or high level coaches or just kind of opportunities. And then my sophomore year, I became like, the fastest guy anybody knows. And so all of a sudden everyone liked me again, and I'm on varsity and I'm making regional MVP and things are going well. So yeah, so for me, especially just the type of player I am, I mean, the athleticism is a huge piece of it. And yeah, and I know that without it, I wasn't that good. And so it definitely played a big part in my soccer journey. And that's just a bit of luck. You definitely got to thank the parents for that one.
Absolutely. I always talk to my mom about how like my basketball career got stunted by the fact that she was 5'4" and I genetically couldn't get past 5'10". So might have been a bowler, if anything. I'm sure built like one right now. Now in high school, I mean, you accomplished some really, really cool things. I mean, you had one season where you guys at Urbana High School were undefeated. You won a state title. I mean, that's no easy feat. I mean, there are people that still talk about those kinds of achievements years afterwards, and yet you're still playing pro. I mean, talk to us about that season. I mean, to me, that's incredible hearing undefeated, winning a state title. Love to hear a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, that was a phenomenal year, and actually those last 2 years. So Frederick sports, people care about sports a lot, and so you have just a generally a good amount of attention around the high school sports. My high school just happened to have a couple, like 4 or 5 years, where all of the sort of good players in the county happened to just be living in our area, and so they're all at my high school. And so my sophomore year in high school, my older brother was a senior, and we had actually probably our best team. I think there was like maybe 6 Division I guys, which like for a
Wow.
public high school, that's really impressive. And so we were really good, and we kind of got knocked out a little early in our playoff journey. But then junior and senior year, I actually didn't lose a game either of those years. But so what happened was junior year going through playoffs, and I missed a game or two because I was down in residency with the under 17 national team. So I was going on trial there. And so I missed like a game or two in playoffs, and my team won. I come back and I'm like in the best shape I've ever been in. I'm super sharp, ready. I've just been playing at a really high level. And I think it's the semifinals. I'm having like one of the best games I've ever played. We're up like 5-1, 6-1 or something. And I get cracked by the goalkeeper pretty hard on like a breakaway. The ball past him, in my opinion, and then he hit me pretty hard. And it was a very clear foul, and actually put me out for a couple of days.
Huh.
Granted, this is my version of the story. But when this happened, I sort of had just like an emotional reaction, like when you get hit really hard. And I dropped the F-bomb, and I said something like, "Are you effing kidding me?" And the ref gave me a straight red in the state semifinals. And so the only game we lost that year, my junior year, was in the state finals, and I didn't play in that game because I got red carded. That was a tough thing to take as a junior in high school, trying to become a young man and realizing that you totally screwed your team over. But then, like, we were just fortunate enough to have an even better team the next year, because I think we were like 19, 1 tie and 1 loss or something. The junior, and then senior year, it was all coming together. And I for sure was not cursing on the field at all, not setting myself up for any straight reds. And, just had this amazing playoff run. Sort of culminated in this just awesome state finals that I had like 2 of the best goals I've ever scored my whole career, like right at the start. And then, it was kind of all done from there. They scored 1, it was like 2-1, and then quickly 3-1, 4-1. I mean, that was just phenomenal. I still get together with some of those guys, and it's like, can you believe how incredible our high school team was? Like, we didn't lose for 2 years straight. And it was amazing. I can't say enough good things about it. And since then, I haven't had a record like that. So I'm trying to get back to that.
So you set a lot of school records on the pitch between goals, assists, points, and whatnot. When did you realize in high school, and I would imagine it's early since you obviously were on the path of setting records, at what point did you realize that your game was going to carry you to the NCAA level?
For sure my junior year. So that point was like, all right, I was fully grown for sure, which is not super tall. I'm about 5'9", but I maxed out there. And just like with my athleticism, it was clear that athletically I was ready for like a super high level. And then that was when I would have made like the Region 1 ODP team, which typically those those guys, pretty much everyone's going to a Division I school if you're on that group.
Mhm.
And we're going to Germany and Italy and wherever, going to these tournaments. And my coaches are D1 coaches, and so I know that they're interested at sort of a minimum level. And then I get invited into the under 17 national team program, and like once you get sort of those credentials, I mean, schools are just interested in you. And then on top of that, which is super helpful for me, is my older brother was a really good player. And so when that happens, there's just generally a little bit of buzz. Everyone wants to see what the younger brother's like.
Yeah.
Um, and so everywhere he went, he got recruited. All those guys were interested in looking at me. So I was just like, had a lot of visuals on me, which is super, super helpful. And all that being said, I had schools that were interested. I had a great recruiting process, and I still ended up just going to the school where my grandfather went and my dad went and my brother was already at. So I spent a ton of time. I probably visited 20 schools, and everywhere was great. And then I ended up just sort of choosing William & Mary because a bit out of comfort, but family tradition, and I also had a good visit, and there was a good team. And I loved that school as well. And I think being a young guy, some of that comfort in knowing like you're at least not making a mistake because you've seen people go through the process, and that the future is bright if you end up getting out of a school like that.
I mean, it's the second. Most people don't know this, but William & Mary is the second oldest institution of higher education in the United States. We're going back to like the 1600s. Long line of history, and
And
speaking
I
of
have
long
to
line of
jump in
history,
here. Actually, I got to
what's
jump in
that?
because we have it's called Charter Day at William &
Uh,
Mary, but we would say we're the oldest school in the country, and so the
mm,
discrepancy is, I think it's between Harvard. Is that right? William &
yeah,
Mary and
Harvard.
Harvard, maybe. One school got chartered to be built first, and one school started building first. And I think Harvard might have broken ground first, but we had the charter first. So it's a
Oh.
holiday at William & Mary. We're the oldest school, and Charter Day is here to prove it. So we celebrate that every time. So I don't care what Google says on this one. But sorry, go on. I
No,
interrupted
that's
you.
awesome. I mean, I didn't know that. Obviously, this is a perfect example. You always got to fact check because, the internet doesn't guarantee anything, right? But no, I had no idea. I just learned something myself, and hopefully a lot of you out there did as well. And speaking of long line, you mentioned it. Your grandfather played, and this I pulled off of a website, so we might have to fact check again. Your
This is
grandfather played
accurate.
hoops at William & Mary. Your mother ran track. Your dad played soccer. Your brother also played soccer there. I mean, obviously you alluded to it, but at any point, was there any other program out there that might have nabbed you, or was it really just William & Mary and you just wanted to go on 19 fun college recruiting trips?
Yeah. So there's a couple. I mean, by the end of it, the schools that were sort of in my final choices were American University, that's in DC, and
Mhm.
that was my Region One coach, a guy named Todd West. I just had a really great relationship with him, and I'd been coached by him at these super high level tournaments, and he liked me, and I respected his coaching style. And American's a great school, and they had at that time had the nicest field in all of the colleges in the country. And so teams like Barcelona and stuff, when they would come in to do international tours, they would all go to America and play there. And so um, that was a great school. And then the other options were Maryland and Duke for me. And Maryland was a bit of a hometown pick. And came really late in the process. And then I just had this great visit there. I like the guys, and obviously Maryland's like, in my opinion, overall, just usually the top soccer program, other than maybe Stanford. Just like year in and year out, they just have a really, really high level team. And so Maryland was there, and then really when it came down to it, was between Duke and William & Mary. And after I chose William & Mary, like years later, my parents were like, "Yeah, we still can't believe you didn't go to Duke," because
Huh.
I had a good scholarship opportunity there, and Duke's also a phenomenal school, maybe ranked a little higher than William & Mary in some cases. And then, just as the name, everyone knows Duke. And so when you say something like that, it rings a lot louder than when you say William & Mary. You got to do a little research.
Clearly.
And I'm 17, and I'm like, what do you mean you thought I was going to choose Duke? Like, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I just did what you guys did, I mean, don't have any regrets or anything like that, William & Mary. I mean, I had a truly phenomenal experience there, and kind of the friends and people you meet there. I wouldn't trade for the world. But it would be nicer when people ask me where I went if I said Duke, and they just would think more highly of me. People go, Duke, oh, that's great. And then William and Mary, they go, oh, where is that? I'm like, well, let me tell you something.
So while at William and Mary, 4-year starter, again, no easy feat. 2017, you guys were conference champions, and you went all the way to the NCAA tournament. Talk to us a little bit about that run.
Yeah, I mean that was my senior year, that run to the tournament. Although my junior year, it was a similar story, kind of like to my high school, in that we were in the conference finals and we're one game away.
You're not going to tell me about another F-bomb, are you?
No, this time no F-bombs. But we were in the lead and probably should have won that game and gave up kind of some sloppy goals right at the end. And so my junior, we were also really close to get in the NCAA tournament bid. And then, my freshman, sophomore year, we had really good teams. And so it was interesting. Maybe the most talented team, if you were looking at just accolades across the board and where guys ended up and playing pro and stuff like that. Maybe my freshman year might have been the most talented team with the worst record. And that sometimes happens. Like the year prior, they had made the NCAAs and they were just guns blazing and had this phenomenal season. And I think sometimes you can expect that you don't remember how hard it was to do that, and you expect it's going to happen again, maybe without putting in the same sort of focus and effort and tenacity into everything. And so we ended up having this terrible season. And then we lost like 10 seniors. So that was my freshman year. And then sophomore year, we started this rebuild and we brought in like 10 freshmen and had this super high potential team, but just lack of experience. And so we had that sort of in-between year. And then junior and senior year, we really were really good teams. And by senior year, there's another player who probably was kind of the star of the show as far as statistics, a guy named Antonio Bustamante. He would be like an attacking center mid that was scoring free kicks and in big games having big goals. And I would be the guy that was like running around doing all the work for him, setting him up. at least by how I would give the rendition of it. He might say the same, but he's a phenomenal player as well. And he had a really amazing season his junior year, my senior year, and in a couple big games. I think it might have been a play-in game for the conference playoffs or something. And he ended up scoring like 4 goals against Hofstra, who was this team we were always back and forth with. But it's, kind of how our story went is in our conference, the CAA. At that time, I would say like the most underrated conference in the country, because we would people just didn't really know about us, but then you would go, okay, who are they playing and who are they beating? And we would end up like, I think we beat Georgetown that year. We might have beat Coastal Carolina. Like we play big teams and get games off them. And that was the same for teams like UNC Wilmington and Hofstra and in more recent years, JMU. Just beat really, really big name schools, but for whatever reason, our conference people just weren't so aware of. And so when we got to the NCAA, in our opinion, we were like really the favorites of this game. We ended up playing Columbia. And if you go back and watch it, you're going to be like, man, they dropped the ball on that one. A couple of mistakes late in that game, end up losing to Columbia. But it was a really amazing experience. I mean, I'm just super thankful to have that tournament experience, because that game is like, it's not like the regular season. I mean, every seat in the whole stadium is filled. The whole school comes out to support you. And, when goals get scored in those games, it's just a completely different beast. Like people don't know, do they just start running around crazy, high-fiving everybody in the stands. It's like, so you can totally see that this hasn't happened to a couple of college kids before. You start getting the feeling of what it's like to be playing at more like a professional level. But yeah, that's sort of the how my experience in terms of the team winning games went at William & Mary.
That's fun. Upon graduation, you make the decision to sign indoor. I think at that time, you become the 7th member of the tribe, William & Mary, that's the name, that went to go play indoor, and the 34th player out of William & Mary to play professional. Now, how did indoor find its way into your life, and how much did you know about professional indoor soccer prior to signing your contract with the Harrisburg Heat?
I absolutely nothing in terms of what I knew about it, other than the name, the Baltimore Blast. I just knew what that was. And there's a couple of coaches I had and people I was connected with that had played for them. Other than that, I didn't know anything. Actually, my dad would have known a lot more about it. And what happened was, I for sure wasn't expecting to go play indoor. He was in like the MLS draft and didn't get drafted, and so I was like looking just for outdoor opportunities after I graduated, maybe in that 6-7 month period, trying to go on trials and things like that. And Pat Healy reached out, the coach of the Heat, and just he's from Maryland, and that family knows a lot of people in that area, and he's a phenomenal recruiter, and so he's reaching out just to anyone he sort of knew and trusted in the Maryland area. But hey, do you guys have good players? Who do you know? My dad owns a big club in Maryland, and so one of the emails he sent out was, "Hey," to my dad, "Hey, do you know any good players?" And he's like, "Well, my son just graduated. If you want to check him out." And so that brought me to the Heat tryouts. Just an open tryout, not like invited to preseason, some specific ID thing. And it just went well. Actually, at the time, I had dreadlocks. And so, when you walk in with dreadlocks, people just notice you quicker. And so I think they were watching me a little more at tryout than some of the other guys. And I had a really great tryout. Still not like making the team or anything. Invited to preseason. Had a solid preseason, and then the rest is kind of history there at the Heat. Pat signed me, and he's really a phenomenal coach, and so I for sure owe a lot of my sort of growth and foundation in the indoor game to Pat, and that's something that makes it easy to stick around and play. Had I had like a bad coach that I also maybe wasn't sure about sort of credential. Pat had this amazing career at Blast. He
Yep.
played outdoor. He was actually a futsal national team guy. And so, and a great coach. And so you kind of see where the stuff can take you in addition to growing as a player. And so that gave me a lot of confidence and just like, okay, this is a great opportunity. Let's stick with it. Let's kind of see where it can go. And then, my first indoor game that I ever saw, even watched, was actually the same one that I played in. So I'd never even seen an indoor game before. And then I just got on the field like this is crazy. And I scored the first goal of the season, the opening goal, maybe like a minute into the game or something, right off the bat. We ended up losing that game, but it was a great start to the career there at the farm show.
So that first goal, was that not against Utica City?
I think it was. I couldn't remember exactly. I'm pretty sure it was Utica home game at our place.
December 1st, 2018 would be the date of that goal. I'd have to go back and fact check now. Now you got me second guessing everything because of the William and Mary thing. But I mean, your first game, I mean, you alluded to it. Like, it had to have been love at first sight. You score a goal in your first game, the first game you actually play in, watch indoor. How did that feel for you?
Yeah, it felt great. Like it's for me, in those type of scenarios, especially being like first game, like sometimes the feeling is a little bit more like relief than it is like super excited and just like emotion. Because then the ball is already rolling, like, okay, I scored a goal in the first game. Now, like, let's see what you can do. You don't have to kind of, that's like a one step prove yourself kind of thing, right? Sometimes you can get stuck in between land where you have to figure out a way for your coach to build confidence in you. But goals happen to do that like very quickly. And so it was kind of a lot of relief. But as far as like the love at first sight with indoor, I would say it took me a long time to start to enjoy that side of the game, just because it's so different. And when you can tell just with guys as they're in the league, like the more you get used to the spacing and where balls are coming off the boards and kind of the rhythm of the games, you just start to play better. And so some of that stuff can be really annoying when you're first starting. That things are just, you don't know how much stuff you're just expecting to happen a certain way because you've been playing soccer for 20 years and it goes completely the opposite way. And you end up in the wrong spot and guys are just scoring on you left and right, or like you're getting caught with shoulders in your face because you didn't realize this collision was coming because you're near the boards or whatever it is. So that was super, I would say actually really frustrating for me. And then maybe like probably the second year in the league, stuff started to click, become a little bit more habitual. And then I was like, okay. And then sometimes you go back to outdoor and realize I didn't touch the ball for 20 minutes. That was terrible. And in the indoor game, you're on the ball all the time, and your impact play to play is just like way higher. Whereas in an outdoor game, you might not do anything the whole game, and sometimes that's just how it goes. So I started to fall more in love with it, I would say, but it took a little while for me.
You had 2 very solid seasons in Harrisburg. Your obviously your statistical output started increasing even more in year 2. Now, COVID derails your time there. Now, during that 2021 abbreviated season, you signed with St. Louis. 5 games, you score 4 goals. Next thing you know, you end up signing for the Ambush. What is it about the Ambush and the city of St. Louis that kept you there? And had not COVID happened, how likely would you have stayed a member of the Harrisburg Heat?
It's a good question. So there was a lot of things going on in my life that was sort of affecting my move, being that I had a long-term girlfriend who's now my fiance who
Congrats,
was
by the way.
getting a, yeah, thank you. She was moving out to St. Louis, where she's from. She's from here, and she had just graduated law school, and so she got a job out in St. Louis. And I wasn't in any way like I'm gonna go play for the Ambush, but I think outside of the season I was gonna move out here anyways with her, because we were just sort of moving forward in our relationship and in life. And so it just worked out that COVID season the Heat wasn't playing, and it was like, well, at least for a couple of months I could hang out with you in St. Louis, and we can be together and live together and see what that's like. And so that was sort of just a bit of luck how that worked out, like for my life side. But then coming to St. Louis, then you start to experience it. I would say that is what sort of really turned my mind, at least mentally. Okay, I really should try to figure out a way to get within the Ambus organization, stay here. Because the city itself is like this amazing soccer city. I mean, I've never been anywhere where people care about soccer more than in St. Louis, which is just awesome. I mean, wherever you go, people like want to talk to you and they're interested in our season, but also just interested in soccer generally and want to go watch the World Cup games or watch whatever big games are on. And so that was really a kind of important thing that I didn't expect coming out of St. Louis. Just because I didn't really know anything about it. And then the organization as a whole was just, it was phenomenal. And probably the best fans, other than I'll give Utica some credit. They have an amazing fan base there as well. But I think our fans are at least second, sometimes first, depending on if we're really packing the family arena. And so that's amazing. And then I really got along with the ownership. And, Coach Locker, who wasn't coach at that time, was just like owner Locker, GM Locker. Now Coach Locker, he for sure was very clear about kind of the potential he saw in me, and just like, hey, I think you can be a huge player for us. I think I could build a team around you. We would really like to get you here. I've loved watching you so far. I mean, like, what do we need to do to bring you in? And it's a bit of a difference from the Heat, not in the sense that they didn't believe in me. For sure, they had a huge amount of belief in me, but there's just an established core group of veteran guys there. Whereas I would say the Ambush was in a bit of a transition period. And so, you had the guys that are still there now that are playing well for them and scoring goals and kind of in those leadership roles. If I was going to be that guy for the Heat, probably some of those guys are getting dropped a tier or whatever that is. So it wasn't as clear. And when someone has a lot of belief in you and says, I want you to be the guy, and I think you're being amazing for this organization, that's what you want to hear as a player. And I had that same sort of belief in myself. And with the fiance being here and her family in St. Louis, and it's a great soccer city with great fans, and the club has belief in you. I mean, it just kind of all worked out in that regard. And I'm super grateful for that, actually. I kind of fell into that scenario and just ended up working out perfectly.
Working out exceptionally well. I mean, you're a phenomenal talent. With 4 games to go, you've already hit career highs in goals, assists, and points. So, I mean, you're obviously doing your thing with St. Louis. They're lucky to have you, and obviously you're lucky to have them as well. Great organization. Despite obviously having a successful weekend, though, the season's been a bit of a challenge for you in the ambush. Like, talk to us about your thoughts on this year.
Yeah, so there's it's kind of hard to put your finger on like what the issue is at times because there's a lot of different variables that are going on here. One of them is just us missing players for whatever reason. And so like JT who's coming back, JT Thomas who's coming back now, like right before the season started, tore his Achilles, and for us, one of our problems we've had is just scoring goals. There's a lot of games when we've been able to hold teams to low scoring, and they'll still outscore us by 1 goal, like a 5-4 game or something. Um, and so our total number of goals this year, I think, quite a bit less than last year. We're missing um, Vadim Kojakov, who had a good set of issues, and then JT, who was hurt, and then at times we've had some other injuries creep in, and so like just in terms of goal scoring, like if just a stat wise, like number of goals we're missing from players, I think that's hurt us. And sometimes that's hard to quantify because maybe another guy steps up and starts to get all those goals. But in our case, it didn't really happen. And so that's one thing that happened. And, that's a bit out of your control. You can't control injuries. And then, one of the other pieces we've been kind of rotating guys in and out of our team, just like for sort of team culture reasons. Anyone who's checked up on us, we've had a lot of guys that got traded or released this year. We now have like Tony Wallace, who's at Milwaukee, and Stefan Mijatovic is at Utica. We had Jeff Machad last year, who was a big player for us, who kind of ended up elsewhere. And then Mo and DA has ended up with the Strikers, and all sort of for different reasons, and all really good players that just for whatever reason didn't have kind of the proper connection that the organization wanted. And it takes a while to build that cohesive unit when guys like that are moving in and out, because those aren't rookies. Those are guys that are going to be decent pieces of your team. And, you can figure out new ways to replace them, but it doesn't happen instantly, And so I think that's a bit of what's been going on, but a bit like last year we're sort of finding our stride right near the end. And the team feels more cohesive than ever. And we've, had some of our best performances by far kind of these last couple of weeks. And so it feels really good within the locker room and within the organization. I think, we're excited and kind of ready for this last stretch. Just like we're going to lay it all out there. And, there's a good chance we could win every game for the rest of the season. And then no one cares what happened in the beginning. You play your playoff games and see what happens from there.
Fingers crossed for you guys. I mean, obviously, it was very exciting games over the past couple of days. Not out of it, so good luck to you in the ambush in that regard. One other question I wanted to ask you before I let you go, and again, I really appreciate the time here. You mentioned you played at OD. You were doing the ODP thing. For those who don't know, Olympic Development Program. You mentioned you were trialing for the U.S. Back before the William and Mary days, but you now had an opportunity to represent in the Stars and the Stripes. I guess most recently in Croatia. You played alongside one of your teammates and several MASL players. What was it like representing the U.S. on the futsal front? And talk to us about your trip to Croatia and that tournament.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. I mean, so if I'm ranking my soccer experiences and sort of like highlights of my career, that's for sure the peak in terms of what I would say is like the level of the players and sort of the how high the stakes are, and just kind of what it means to me personally. I mean, you kind of get in the habit of doing things, and so it's been a little while for me since I've been like really, really nervous for something, and going on some of those camps and trying to break into the roster. It's so important for me, it was just so important. Like I knew if I could do this, I would be the biggest moment of my career. And so every time I'm showing up, you don't know what's going to happen. You just are trying to perform and hope that they like what they see. And, each step, it doesn't sort of go away. It's like the first camp, I'm like, all right, I just want to see if they'll invite me back. And so I'm doing everything I can. Then you get invited back. It's like, okay, let me see if I can break into that top group. And then that happens. And then I got invited to Croatia. And it's like, okay, well, let me see if I can score a goal or perform. And fortunately, at each step, it's just been able to work out. And when I Croatia scoring, say like 2.5 goals. One was an own goal. But that was really an amazing feeling. I mean, just sort of really felt like accomplished. Like I will 100% tell my kids that I scored goals for the U.S. men's futsal national team. And we won the tournament out there, which is the first time that team's done that. So it feels really good to be a part of a group that's like growing and performing and now getting some recognition on a world stage. And I can't say good enough things about like the coaching staff there and the support staff and the guys on the team and sort of the commitment and kind of just the honor of being out there and wearing those jerseys. I mean, I'm like have like 1,000 pictures of me in those uniforms just in case somehow I lose half of them. I got the other ones because there's definitely been nothing else in my soccer career that I'm just more proud of in wearing the U.S. kit and being able to perform for the country.
I hope they do a better job in terms of marketing that, because futsal is exciting. You obviously have worked your tail off to get there. Several players have obviously, represent the country is a great honor. So I hope U.S. soccer does promote it more, because love to catch more of these games, as I'm sure a lot of other fans of the indoor game would. Now, couple rapid fire questions for you before we close things out. First answer that pops in off the top of your head, and then we can move on. The challenge round, not really a challenge round, but
okay.
Fun stuff. Now, you obviously played the sport the vast majority of your life. Now, who's your favorite soccer team, though, growing up?
I was supposed to be rapid fire. Sorry.
You're good.
I just like the national team. I'm not a fan of like any club. It's always just been the U.S. men's national team. That's really who I watch.
All right. Fair enough. Good answer. All right. Well, favorite player then? Favorite soccer player?
It's got to be Messi overall. I mean, especially after this last year.
Yeah, of course. All right. Other than playing sports, what else are you passionate about?
I'm a pretty big gamer, although recently I've dialed it back a little bit. Pretty big gamer, and just I'm pretty active generally. So like, if you're at the beach, spike ball, volleyball, ultimate whatever, can jam. I'm actually very passionate about those types of games, and I have quite the duo with my fiance being my teammate in most of those, and so we take that stuff seriously.
I love it. That's awesome. Favorite film?
I keep saying Interstellar to this one. That's the one that's got me right now. I'm a big Marvel fan, a big Star Wars guy, and a big Lord of the Rings guy. But if I have to pick a single film, it's been Interstellar, and I would say the past couple of years.
All right. Favorite musical artist?
I'm going Chance the Rapper on that one.
All right. Okay. And then last but not least, most famous person you've ever had a conversation with?
That's got to be you. That's an easy one. That's got to be you.
Wow. We got to get you out a little more. Oh, man, that's funny. And actually, that was I lied to you. That really wasn't the last question. The last one is, what are your, any final like thoughts, any words you want to leave our audience with? Anything at all?
Well, thanks for having me on. This was actually incredibly enjoyable. You did a great job with it. Any final things? Go watch the Ambush on Twitch. We're gonna be the team to beat the end of the season. So and to the other teams, we're coming for you.
I love it. I love the fire. Again, you're having a phenomenal year. It's a joy getting to watch you play. It was an even bigger joy and an honor getting to chat with you. So good luck to you. Good luck to the St. Louis Ambush. And for everybody out there tuning into MASL Insider, thank you so much. Make sure you follow, subscribe, hit those notifications, and we'll see you all next week. On behalf of myself and, of course, the great, that way, William Eskay, we out.